Howdy, folks. For those who don't know me, I'm a psychically sensitive person. There are a lot more people like me out there than most realize, and you may yourself be so. And I'm not all that very good at managing that state of affairs until recently. I started working with particularly dreams, focusing on them, trying to draw them out and, basically clarify them, stop them from being just random pieces of psychological gobbledygook, and try to refine them as communications between myself and the other world. As such, I have tried to tune out of all of the hoopla that has been going on, particularly around WikiLeaks and the recent US elections. I really, really tuned out once I heard the word spirit cooking. That was the point at the TV show that I tuned out. And when I say TV show, I really mean it. WikiLeaks has been coming out basically on a weekly basis since the DNC with these batches of emails from Hillary Clinton's crowd, which really, you should be really paranoid about. Why we're only getting leaked emails from this sector of the political spectrum, and not that, I think that the Clintons are all that great, but it should raise an alarm bell for you. But every successive week has become more intense, more mysterious, like a crime thriller TV show. So I tuned out of that TV series once I heard the word spirit cooking. I told my wife and my friends, just don't. I'm out. I'm out. Because I know that I'm sensitive. Meaning that I have a limited amount of energy to give things, and things can easily take my energy. And I've got to allocate it properly. But then PizzaGate came along, and I thought, well, this sounds really fucking ridiculous. People are losing their fucking minds. And I didn't want to hear anything about that either. I've successfully avoided it up until about 2 weeks ago, when I've heard from friends and my wife. I wish that, they would actually fucking listen and not send me links every single fucking week about these subjects. But hey, that's what they did, and as a result, I took a look. Now, this isn't me just moaning about, Jesus. Neither is it that I'm coming with you with any explosive information here, but I know the difference between a dream, a fantasy, a hallucination, an hallucination. I can distinguish these things one from the other because I've been exploring consciousness and perception for years, and also the science of parapsychology and, magic, mysticism. So a few days ago, I had this experience that I only really think could be remote viewing or some kind of psychic signal that I picked up on, because I was surrounded with all of this PizzaGate stuff to such an intensity that, and wasn't all that intense. I'm sure if you've picked up on this video, you have been deeper in this shit than I have so far, but I was in deep enough that I had something that was kind of like a nightmare, which at first I thought was a nightmare. But when I realized how deeply and profoundly it affected my consciousness and how lucid the experience was, and how I seemed to be in the position of an actual person who wasn't me. Um, I'm not going to explain the details of this experience, but basically it involved horrible things being done to a child. It was deeply unsettling, and it still is. It still haunts me. It still kind of creeps me out. And the only reason why I'm able to speak of it is because I've already kind of almost polished off a whole bottle of white wine. Otherwise, I just wouldn't have the balls to, you know, I couldn't find it in me to share this with other people. There's something deeper going on here, guys, than, you know, fucking Podesta and his brother and Hillary Clinton and her fucking pervert, rapist, asshole husband. It goes way deeper. And that's why I'm here to alert you guys to, because I notice that there's a lot of partisanship going on here. There's an idea that this is just isolated to Washington, D.C., and some people actually think it's just isolated to the Democrats. Could you imagine that kind of narrow vision? No, this is a culture. And I have seen things throughout the years that, you know, when I took them into my mind in conjunction with all of the other fucked up things that go on in this world, I just kind of thought, oh well, that's just another thing. I didn't realize that it was the thing. I didn't realize that it was what all of the elites do. I didn't realize that it was the culture. And I have seen things in the last few weeks, in the last week or so, um, from a documentary that the name is escaping me right now, but I will post a link to it in the description. It's fascinating. It's this professor. He's a bit of a Marxist, but brilliant guy. Back in the 70s, he featured on a underground documentary explaining how, particularly in Houston, as well as in a lot of other big cities in America, basically little boys, there's basically a culture of little boys who, you know, they have no family, or if they do, the family is destitute, or the parents are too drunk or fucked up on drugs to care for them. And they're basically prostitutes. They're turning tricks out there, and the people who avail of these prostitutes are the high rollers, people within the establishment, both political and industrial and commercial. I've also seen documents concerning police investigations that either have went their course or have been stopped midway by some mysterious upper power that spans the entire world, both the Western world and the developing world. This is how our rulers operate. Now I'll provide all the links that I can in the description of this video. But this isn't what I want to talk about mainly. I want to tell you guys that this goes even deeper than that. That it's not just that these are a bunch of perverts. They are. But there's a reason for this perversion. Like, have you ever wondered what makes a pedophile do his or her thing? I can relate it to, say, and you know, I guess I have to admit to this, a schoolgirl fetish. You know, whether it's actually a schoolgirl in a school uniform or a grown woman in a school uniform, there's a fetish there that, you know, men like that, just like, you know, women like, you know, firefighters and policemen in their uniforms. And I shared in this fetish up until, you know, just recently, really, to be honest, and I wouldn't be surprised if it kind of peeped its head back for a little while. I don't know. I like school uniforms, and I think that there is a deeper psychological thing going on there. And it's got a lot to do with deriving power from youth, deriving power from innocence. So I think you can pick up on where I'm going with this, that what we see here, the rampant pedophilia in the highest echelons of power in our society, is really dark magic, black magic, evil, if you will. These people feel as though, and I think that they do, derive power from destroying innocence. And they definitely, in my opinion, see that as a magical act and as an empowering act. And the fact of the matter is that they don't care that we know. In fact, they like that we know, because that is yet another layer of stealing innocence. I have been hacking away at the conspiracy for, by golly, about 15 years now. Once I saw those towers go down, you know, I had to ask myself some fucking questions, and then about 10 or 20 rabbit holes opened wide up for me, through which I fell down many and lost myself for several years, but I gained a lot of intelligence between then and now. And we do certainly live in a dark, occult society. There are so many different subjects that you can, like I say, rabbit holes that you can go down to prove that to yourself. One quick way is to hop on Google Earth and take a look at all of the take a look at how major cities like Washington, D.C. are littered with symbolism, and their roadways and their architecture, their buildings from the eagle view are symbols like owls, inverted pentagrams and such. The Oval Office, you know, oval, you know, what's that? You know, a uterus, you know, rather not a uterus, but a womb, while you have that spire thing. You know, it's fucking big penis, isn't it? Loads of things like this show us that we live in a magical world. A magical world tailored for them. And if you want, verification of, whether these symbols worked into Washington, D.C. are real, then just ask anybody who has to drive around Washington, D.C., and they'll tell you it's the worst planned city in terms of driving. It's not planned with people in mind, it's planned with symbolism in mind. So that's the situation we're in. So we're not going to win this war by forming mobs on the internet or in the real world and lynching a select few people. In fact, the likelihood is the reason why we are given this information at this time. Remember, we're living in a crime thriller. They released this information intentionally. It's called a limited hangout. Google the term. Also Google how Julian Assange is an MK Ultra victim. He was brainwashed by the family from when he was a child with extreme amounts of LSD and locked in a dark room, at the end of which the leader of that cult would go into the dark room and act as a savior, just as the LSD trip was dying down. So that guy, there's no human inside him, okay? Just look at him speak. He has no emotions. Talks like a robot. Because that's what he is. And him and WikiLeaks, they have an agenda. The WikiLeaks before the WikiLeaks was Cryptome.com, and I believe they were genuine. One reason why I think the guy behind Cryptome was genuine is because he didn't end up on Time magazine. Like Daniel Ellsberg ended up on Time magazine, or I don't know, take your pick from a variety of other really evil and fucked up people who ended up on Time magazine. Another reason why I think that WikiLeaks is controlled opposition is because the founder of Cryptome refused to join Julian Assange when he was launching WikiLeaks. He found it very suspicious that Julian Assange needed several $1 million. A sum that he wasn't going to get from the general public, because the general public don't have tens of millions of dollars, but who do? Industrialists, secret organizations like the CIA and NSA, damn straight. I'm, kind of trailing off here. Sorry, it's a product of the white wine, but I'm trying to lay out the pieces of information here that kind of give you the overview that you're being fucked with. And being herded into this mob that is going to basically seek out and find these scapegoats that the elites have put up in front of you, namely the Podestas and the Clintons, and lynch them, and then go home and think, well, that's the job done, there are no pedophiles left in the establishment, and we can go back to sleep. That is the agenda, folks. That is the agenda. Just like back in the day, the Mafia, La Cosa Nostra, and before, whenever the FBI would get too close to the organization, the man who had the most dirt on him would be approached by the rest of the mob and told, hey, look, dude, you're going to have to take the fall here. You're the one who's dirty. And if you don't take the fall and take all the blame for everything that we did, then they're going to find out that it's more than you. They're going to find us. And I'm sorry, but you would be kind of a fool to think that, this tactic is somehow, there's some kind of universal law that, makes it so that only Italian Americans can use that ploy to escape persecution. So, we're not going to do it with mobs tearing down the steeple. What we're going to do it with is withdrawing our consent. Completely. Withdrawing our consent from their funny money, which is, Federal Reserve malarkey. I say funny money because they can do whatever they want with it. It's a fiction. We're going to do it by withdrawing consent from their political structures and building our own. Whatever structures they may be, as long as they are sovereign, independent, locally based structures. That, we can have some kind of federation, but not in the form that we know it today. We need state rights, we need local government rights that precede federal rights. But we can't really do that, though, can we? Most people are under the spell. They are taken in by the propaganda and the black magic that is wielded by these elites. I mean, what are they doing raping all these children for? Like I said, they derive power. They derive energy from destroying innocence. What's that power being used to do? It's being used against us, to subjugate us. To fuel their mind control matrix. A bit of an airy-fairy subject, right? Bit out there. But I guarantee you that it's not. And we're not going to be able to take down that matrix physically. Again, we can't do it with mobs. Mobs are stupid. Mobs are as smart as the dumbest person in them. So, what you gonna do? Well, we're going to use our own magic. See, I see a lot of people out there, right, that are actually on to all of this stuff, that are on to the dark occult agenda, and they're all Christians, for the most part. Or if they're not Christians, they still have this fucked up belief that any magic whatsoever, any mysticism is consorting with the devil, or having relations with spirits that, are bad, fundamentally bad. That all power that man can yield on his own is fundamentally wrong and corrupt. These are the ideations of a slave. This comes from the religion of slaves. And it is precisely how we've gotten ourselves into this fucking situation. Back a few years back, I think the early 2000s, maybe the late 1990s, whether you like him or not, Jeff Rents of Coast to Coast had a weekly experiment. He would ask his listeners to, direct their focus to a certain activity, such as bringing rain to a desert that hasn't seen rain in 30 years. As one of the most famous examples. And it happened just by pure intention of the listenership. Now, he put an end to those experiments because he felt that the responsibility was too great, and the potential danger was too great. Just a mob of people directing their unified intention towards something, that it was unnatural. And I agree. There shouldn't be some kind of centralized thing that could actually be co-opted and redirected towards evil ends. This is something that we all have to do from our hearts. We have to have good intentions. And people might ask how, one might go about that. And I would suggest that, look into parapsychology. Look into magic. And do what I do. Do what I've been doing recently and what a friend has been doing recently. Dream work. Keep a dream diary beside your bed. When you wake up and you have a dream, write that shit down. Try to be as detailed as possible. What you've experienced. That act alone will help you actually remember your dreams and will actually make them more detailed. These aren't just random pieces of information that flow through your head, folks. This is information that is coming from another source, from the other side, if you will. And after a while, when you get into your dream diary, you get comfortable with that. You may experience what I and my friends have experienced. And that is a thinning of the veil between sleeping life and waking life, a kind of a surreality where, the distinction between the two becomes less and less. Not in a disempowering way where you get lost and you don't know whether you're awake or asleep at any given moment. That's just Hollywood bullshit. No, you know when you're awake and when you're asleep. It's just this uncanny feeling that maybe all of life is a dream. And that maybe you have just as much power over the waking world as you do over your dream world. Now, that isn't any direct egotistical power. It's more of like a subtle influence of your intentions. Intentions that you can't consciously set, like the New Age movement tries to tell you that you can. Just have good intentions, man, and things will work out and you'll get loads of shit. No, not that. Your goodness or your badness will come out. And you can see it for what it is, and you'll have a choice between whether to clean up your shit or wallow in it. When you get to that point, I want you to then start to record things like what you're eating, when you eat, when you go to sleep, how you feel about those things, how those things change your feelings, as in your emotions, your mood, as well as your sense of physical wellness. And then, also kind of just reflect on those things, because when you record those things, then you will remember them more sharply. Your sleep will improve, if it hasn't already improved from your dream diary. And you will also have a little more conscious control over your habits and what you eat and such things. But another aspect of that, I think, I'm not quite sure, I'm still exploring this yet, I think that veil between perceiving waking and sleeping life might actually grow even thinner. Now that is where we want to get. Because it's in the unconscious realm that we have our power. It's in the individual realm. It's in the realm of the spirit. And whatever religion you may keep, I think you will grow stronger in your faith or your conviction. And that's what we want in this world. That's how we can fix things. It's how we can set them right. There has to be a way out of this global dictatorship, this corporate, political, media, and dark occult dictatorship. And it's not going to be by running out there with pitchforks and torches to tear down the ivory tower. Because when we get angry and we join mobs, and remember, a mob is only as smart as the dumbest person in it, we are ripe for manipulation by the people who have been playing us like pawns for centuries and know exactly how we tick. I don't know what to make of these theories that are coming out from sources like the Freeman perspective and such. The idea that by now they have quantum computers, simulated reality. Google that. The idea that all of us are nodes inside of a quantum computer. Not us, ourselves, but we are represented in a quantum computer by nodes that they can basically run simulations to predict how we react to particular stimuli, and then run simulations with possible stimuli that can be introduced into the world, and then gauge our reactions, and then decide what kind of false flag or TV show or movie to release on this particular day, in this particular year, to get a particular reaction from us. But I have to say that we have gotten to the point where people are so drone-like and so predictable and so easy to just fall right into the desires of our ruling elite, the ruling cabal, that I think maybe there is a quantum computer out there that can gauge everything. But what a quantum computer couldn't possibly fucking understand or comprehend is the human spirit and the decisions that it can make from day to day. That is what I want to tune into, and that's what I want you to turn into, because quite frankly, I'm sick of living in this fucked up world. I've gotten to the half point in my life, and I'm sick of illusions. I'm sick of half measures. I'm sick of people just buying into bullshit. I'm sick of buying into bullshit myself because I want the truth. I want a good life. I look around at my grandparents, my parents, my my little cousins and their children, and one day I will be an uncle, and I don't I I don't want a bad world for them. I want something better. Fuck me, I don't care. I'll survive on my own. But I see a lot of innocent people out there, and I don't want to be contributing to their suffering. So I'm not going to buy into bullshit anymore. No, never. Never once. Never again. Join me, will you? Join me in the revolution of the spirit.